Hello everybody, and welcome to My Hero Academia, chapter number 375 review. This chapter is titled, Chaotic Confusion. So, last time in My Hero Academia, we saw that Kurogiri Shirokuma, whatever you want to call him, pretty much transferred a bunch of the villains to where they would be best used in fighting. So we saw that Dabi or Toya got transferred to where Inji Endeavor is, and at the same time, we saw that a Toga, who had twice his blood, moved over to where Hawks was, and we saw that Yamada, who is of course President Mike, got moved over to around where Aizawa is, being that they were both big friends of Shirokuma as a child. And we end up starting off this chapter back in time a little bit, as we started at Okoto Island, where it's Uraraka and Azui versus Toga. So we see here, we just see the outlines of a battle going on. And we see that Froppy is dealing some damage to Toga. Uravi's going around trying to land a few hits. And we see that Uraraka is just thinking, her trick for concealing her presence is a basic type of misdirection. It should be a very nuanced move that it's gotta have a limit to how many people can attack her at once. So we need to keep her on guard with a sensor-type hero that can at least back her up. And Uraraka's like, here we go, Toga, get back here, as she wrangles out of her grasp. As we cut over to Gang Orca, who's also here, as he's just like, this big Nomu doesn't have Hyper Regenerate. We need to start fighting. As we see that Gang Orca is going against one of the high-end Nomus. And he starts to go in a little bit of a speech. He's like, the villain's numbers are thinning too. Pinned down and near high end, we've got this in the bag. Taking down these creeps while they're still on this island is our mission. As we cut to a shot of Toga in her mask, a mask that we actually haven't seen in a very long time. And at this point, we go over and sort of get Toga's mind space during all of this. She's like, the more people we lose on our side, the slimmer my chances of avoiding capture become, and with the amount of Jin's blood I have, I can only sustain myself for about 30 to 40 minutes of being transformed. And she thinks, just, sure, I could drink it now and take back our numbers advantage, but then I would be stuck on this island and the sad man's parade wouldn't go far. And she's just thinking even more, and if we do turn things around here, I doubt they'd leave any boats docked on the island, which would be our only shot at getting away. Divide and isolate. Did the heroes know about Jin's blood? Either way, I'm really helpless here. Things are going to be all over. Well, in that case, I'm going to do what I am meant to do and bet on Spinner. As we get some narration over this, that pretty much Toga's actions are not driven by her seeing the bigger picture and everything. But this rancor and coming to terms that she has recently had throughout the series completed her transformation to a full-fledged villain. As we sort of get multiple ideas here. First off, after what Uraraka said in the big war arc that we had last time, or the last big war in My Hero, whatever's covered in Season 6, I don't even know what you'd call that. Pretty much what Uraraka said to Toga there made Toga be like, okay, well, this is this war, and I'm done messing with stuff, right? I'm a villain now. There's no salvation for me, and the people who love me aren't going to care, so I'm going to fight. And we also get the idea that Toga is, again, trusting in the League, and trusting in Spinner to get his job done to transfer all of them by waking up Kurogiri. At this point, we cut over to Froppy, where she's fighting Toga. And we see that Froppy sees that Toga has a vial of blood, and she's like, there it is, she has him blood saved. Who is it? One's Shigaraki's? Who could it be? Better not find out, as we see that Sue uses her tongue to break open the vial. But Toga's like, that was a decoy. With a chemical made to have the what's called Nomus attack you. As we see this continue, and Suyu almost definitely get very harmed. As we see then that Uraraka comes up and she's like, Froppy, what's going on? As we see that Toga has most likely transformed into another Azui, and she says, to make sure that Jin's march gets to go without fail, I have to make an instant decision. As we see that as Froppy, who she just transformed into, she then transforms into Twice all of a sudden. So now there's a Twice clone here who can make a bunch more, and Toga has changed the tide of this battle. And at this point, the warp gate opens up, and Korigiri pops through, and he's like, must save Shigaraki and his allies. Himiko Toga, what do you want to do? And Toga's like, to slaughter the heroes, starting with Hawks. Send me out there, Korigiri. As we see that Uraraka just starts running up behind, and she's like, get back here. We still haven't had our talk about romance. As we go through, and we see that Sue's just like, Ochako, no, what are you doing? As we see a Twice clone fading into the portal, and they sort of, once they're through, they go, I wish we could have. As we then go over to the Gunga Mountain Villa ruins, as we cut back to where last week's chapter ended. And we see that here, the Twice clone is just like, oh, hey, it's Toga of Mugiwara's blood. She had some saved up when I infiltrated the Liberation Army. I was sure to eliminate every last sample, even to traces after the battle. As we see this Hawks, and Hawks is like, okay, here's what's going on. But we see Toga's just like, it's too late, as she uses the Sad Man's Parade, Infinite Doubles. As we just see this very epic 2-page spread with a bunch of heroes fighting in the center, and we see Dabi flying through the air, almost certainly going after Endeavor, and just a Sad Man Parade going on below with a bunch of people just there and saying stuff and doing that sort of thing, right? We see a bunch of Twices. We see Hawks look at this, and he's just like, oh crap, what's going on here? At this point, we also see Classes 2B's Komori, who is the mushroom girl. She's here, and she's like, they're not giving us a second to breathe, shroom. As we all of a sudden, we cut back through, and we see that somebody else came out of the portal. We see that Uraraka and Azui are also coming through, as Uraraka is just saying, I ain't losing sight of you, not again. As we sort of get some other qualification things of what's going on here, as we see that Tsuyu grabbed Uraraka with her tongue, flinged her into the portal, and ended up getting brought through herself. And Froppy's just like, Ochako, the feelings you've locked up inside. As we get a few more establishing shots at the end of Dabi, Endeavor, Ochako, Hawks, and All for One. And at the very bottom, we see the news reporter from last time who was speaking about the butterfly effect and how they should not pander to All for One. And that's where our chapter ends. Again, another 15-page chapter. Not a whole lot to note on there. Again, I hope, I pray, and all of that Horikoshi Sensei is getting better as he writes, and that he is doing good health-wise. I know there's been a few author comments here recently which have been a little bit iffy, but just hope for his safety. So, going through this chapter, this is definitely a much better chapter than last time. We finally cut back to where the whole thing with Tsuyu versus Ochako, or Tsuyu and Ochako versus Toga's going on. It was a very big thing we needed. And again, we have a lot more of this conceptual ideas with, they were rarely driven by any sort of big picture. However, her Rancor completed her transformation to a villain. We get a bunch of that, and while it isn't a problem, it is also very confusing what happens with the other Sue and Froppy and all of that whenever Toga transforms. Then uses the gem blood and goes through. It can be very hard to say, but the message still rings out true. Toga believes in her friends, Ochako believes what she's doing is right, and they still wanted to have their chat about romance. The lovely shonen female MC. What are we going to do about this trope? But the other things in the Gunga Mountain Village ruins is very cool. The infinite double Sad Man's Parade color spread, or not color spread, just double page spread, is really cool. And I have to say, I do really like the establishing shots at the end of the chapter of pretty much all of the pairs who are going to be fighting facing off against each other, especially with Dobby and Endeavor. And All For One just still looks like a total prick here in this too, so good chapter overall, 375 again. This chapter was titled Chaotic Confusion. And with that, we'll see y'all next time. And this is going to be Glowplasma231 out.